Story 1. I grew up poor and experienced constant low-level stress and worry about money. That stress takes a toll on your body over time. Story 2. How expensive being poor actually is. Cheap items break faster, payday loans damage your finances, and you cannot afford to buy in bulk or take advantage of deals. You end up paying more for everything in the long run. Story 3. How it grinds people into dust. Between malnourishment, housing insecurity, direct, secondary, and generational trauma, abject exploitation by finance, poor health, environmental toxins, despair, and violence, it is so overwhelming. Story 4. It's extremely embarrassing to need to return something you cannot pay for at the checkout, so I used to always triple or quadruple check the prices of everything in my cart, plus taxes and $1 or $2 buffer. Repeat that every single time you are getting food, and it starts to take a toll on how you perceive food. For example, trying to justify what to buy based on weight to dollar. So if something is 100 grams per $1, you might be more tempted than getting a healthier, more tasty option that costs $1.50 per 100 grams, just so you get more full for cheaper. Story 5. How much a little money can impact you. We were living on government benefits in the United Kingdom when I was a child, as my father had died and my mother was battling cancer. She gave me £5 to go to the shop and buy a small piece of meat for dinner. I got to the shop and realized I had lost the money. When I got home and told her, the look on her face still haunts me 40 years later. I am pretty well off now, but every penny counts. Story 6. Buying cheap products turns out to be more expensive in the long run. However, because you do not have a choice, you remain stuck in that cycle. Story 7. When people try to imagine poverty, I think they imagine having to get by on very little money, but in some ways, that is the easy part. The hard part is the stress of not knowing how you are going to make rent, expecting every knock at the door to be a debt collector, and being unable to absorb any kind of financial shock. Story 8. How psychologically difficult it can be. I didn't have a bed from 6th grade up until I was 26. I slept on a pallet of blankets in my room, and no one was ever allowed to come over because my mom was so ashamed that she was never able to buy me a bed. My mom hasn't had a bed either since I was 10 years old. I'm almost 30, and she still doesn't. I've offered to buy her a bed, but she won't let me because, in her words, I went without so you could have a chance, and I don't need it. I was never able to buy you one, and my life is almost over. It would be a waste. I'm making more money now than anyone has ever seen in my family. My mom was a single mother taking care of me, my sister, and my sister's baby on $10 an hour and $100 of supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits a month. I have a king-size bed and my own place now, but there are many nights I can't sleep, so I have to make a pallet next to my bed and sleep there because it's comforting and feels like home. When you grow up in poverty, it not only changes how you process the world, but how you're able to function in it, both physically and mentally. It influences everything about you. I didn't expect this to attract a lot of attention, but thank you for all the kind words and conversation around this. Obviously, I still struggle with poverty even if I'm no longer considered poor. I really do want to get my mom a bed. I always have, but my mom doesn't do well with gifts, even if she deserves them. She has some mental health issues but doesn't believe in therapy, so she's not open to just receiving help as much as I'd want. I have to respect that. She will literally flip like a switch, and I can't have that. She does want teeth though, so I'm trying to see if, once she retires, that's still an option. She's a diabetic with an overbite and an extra bone in the roof of her mouth. Anywhere she's gone to see about implants or dentures, it's over $10,000 up front, and I can't do that yet. If there are any suggestions regarding that, I'm all ears. Story 9. Living on minimum wage or national average jobs is not the same as having a comfortable $80,000 plus job. Reddit has a habit of people earning $80,000 to $100,000 plus acting like they are in the same situation as those actually at the bottom. Story 10. It is rarely a matter of just making better choices. You only have bad choices and worse choices. For example, you buy a poor quality car because it is all you can afford, but it has high maintenance costs that prevent you from saving money to buy a better car. Poverty is a negative feedback loop. It gets worse the longer you are in it, and the longer you are in it, the harder it is to get out. For example, you need toilet paper. There are 6 rolls for $5 or a pack of 12 rolls on special for $8. You have $6.50. It destroys you physically and mentally. For example, a cavity in a tooth is absolutely debilitating but easily prevented if you can afford prevention. Hard work is a myth. I worked harder when I was poor than I ever have since I got out. 10-hour days on my feet in retail were far harder than my work-from-home job doing data analysis, and the work-from-home job pays 3 times what retail did. What people in poverty need most of the time is a lucky break. They need an opportunity. That is what happened to me. I went from living payday to solidly middle class in the span of 3 years because someone took a chance on me. Story 11. No one has mentioned the effect on education. Children in poverty fall about 7 years behind their peers in literacy and numeracy, impacting everything else they learn. They are less likely to enter higher education and less likely to work in professional jobs due to being unable to access a full curriculum. There is a ripple effect that eventually leads to poverty in adulthood. In addition, there is a mental burden on children that is often overlooked or underestimated. Children do not realize it is not normal to feel worried about food insecurity, housing instability, or caregiving responsibilities. Young caregivers who are responsible for looking after siblings or other adults in the home fare worse. When you have the world on your shoulders, it is natural not to focus at school, and this is reflected in behavior and motivation to learn. Story 12. Growing up in poverty traumatizes you for life on multiple levels, even if you manage to escape it. If you cannot afford doctor or dental appointments, your physical and mental health are impacted for life. Teeth do not grow back. Unchecked chronic medical conditions take their toll. Digging yourself out or trying to is also traumatizing because you have to work 10 times harder than somebody with parents who can provide support. You really do work 10 times harder at everything, and you get tired. You are exhausted all the time, and you know rest is not coming. You cannot afford it. Stress, misery, grief. My teen and young adult years were spent working and worrying instead of growing up and figuring out who I was and what brought me joy and fulfillment. I am still more than 10 years behind on that, probably, but the lack of financial support from parents takes multiple tolls. There is immense comfort in knowing I can call my mom or dad if I get a flat tire or if my car breaks down, even if it never happens. You don't know how comforting that truly can be unless you have felt the absence of it. Just a constant feeling of despair. Constant planning. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Catastrophizing so that you are never caught without financial resources. You do it to bring yourself some kind of comfort, but that comfort never comes. You just repeat the cycle. The constant thought that you have to do everything by yourself because you have nothing and nobody and never will, never goes away. It is a constant stressor. I make more money than anybody in my family right now by a lot, and money is always a worry for me. Reading all this back, I think I sound like a really miserable person, but I am not. I am doing very well considering all the circumstances. This is just one facet, a very difficult one. Story 13. You cannot just put money away in savings. I think that is the biggest issue. People who have disposable income think that if they just put money in savings it would help them later, which it would, but poor people barely have enough to pay their bills and live for the month. Story 14. I have spent the entire last year spending all of my money on vehicles to get to work. I eat, sleep, work, and come home to work on a vehicle so that I can make sure I get to work. Story 15. There is nowhere to turn. When you are that broke, everyone you can ask for help is either broke too or you have already asked. It is like being backed onto the edge of a cliff, always aware that one more step back brings you closer to something you may never come back from. Story 16. How hunger leaves a mark that never goes away. For a while, I could eat only 3 times a week. If I ate an extra portion, then I could not eat for 2 more days. It messes with your mind and never leaves, no matter the life circumstances. Story 17. People in poverty usually have to calculate carefully when deciding between working more hours or seeking a pay raise. If you earn too much, you could easily lose your food benefits and medical insurance, which may not be worth the extra income. Some people have lost more than $300 worth of benefits by earning an additional $100. Story 18. How dull it is. You are just shut down because nothing is possible. If you are prone to depression, poverty worsens it significantly. Story 19. Being able to afford extra things and not worrying about my next meal is still mind-blowing to me, even though I made it out of poverty. Even just being able to eat and do most of whatever I want has not registered with me. I think it is traumatic to be poor. Story 20. How expensive it is to be poor. If you have no or little credit, you pay much more for things. If you cannot afford something, you incur overdraft or late fees. You can only afford inexpensive items, which break more often and cost money to repair or replace. You do not have the cash to invest and build wealth. You often do not have enough cash to pay for things up front, putting you in debt and costing more money in interest. People with no money are charged significantly more. Story 21. I work at a nice company. We get free snacks in our break room. I always take 2 to stash 1 in my desk. My desk is full of snacks. It makes no sense because every day the break room is restocked. But something in me needs to take an extra one just in case. It makes me feel unhinged. Story 22. I leave my front porch light on no matter what, so I know if the power is on or not when I get home. It was shut off constantly as a child. I used to come home to an orange tag on the door or have the power shut off while I was home. I still get tense when someone knocks on my door because of this. My electricity bill is on automatic payment. Story 23. How truly stressful it can be. How hard it is to get out of. How easy it is to get into, especially now. How truly expensive it is. And how it is not a moral failing. Story 24. How generous you can be when you have just a little bit extra. Extra tips or some birthday money, and a lot of the time you spend it on someone else. A child, partner, family member, or friend. When you do not have many resources, having a little extra is rare and feels very good to spend on someone you care about. Story 25. Engaging in even middle-class normalcy feels extremely odd. Everything feels like a luxury and therefore very uncomfortable. It is not just knowing you are an outlier of what people consider normal, but also the fact that it feels so foreign and uncomfortable. You feel like an imposter and like you should not be experiencing it in the first place. It is very odd and alienating. Sometimes this makes you more likely to stay home and not do anything because you are far more comfortable that way. I still do not like going to events or dressing up. I am not used to it. Story 26. It's not a laziness issue. It's not an issue of not investing, saving, or having enough streams of income. It's simply that society does not allow enough money to be given to you, the person. So it becomes pure, unbridled survival. I hate when people say, just work more hours, just work harder. You're so lazy. No, I am working my tail off, and you all need to stop judging because you have not been in my shoes. Story 27. I still struggle with food. Free food means stuff yourself, take what you can home, and never throw out leftovers. Story 28. How distraught I was when, at around 9 o'clock, I lost 10 pounds I had been given to get food at Tesco in the late 1980s, as that was literally the only money we had for that week. How cold I always was and how I always felt hungry. Looking back at the few photos, how thin I was, how my clothes never matched or fit. The normality of the electricity turning off because we couldn't afford to pay the bills. Even now, 30 years later and comfortably middle class, I still have a crippling fear of falling into debt and a reluctance to buy, for example, a new pair of shoes when my existing ones do not have holes yet. Story 29. I would only put $5 of gas in my tank at a time. I couldn't risk needing cash in an emergency and having $40 tied up in the gas tank. That is probably the most trivial aspect of poverty I have lived with, but it is one of those things that sticks with you. When there is never enough money, you have to overthink everything. Story 30. People think the worst part is not having possessions. It is actually the constant, exhausting fear that one bad day will take away the little you do have. Story 31. Those food stamps and welfare benefits that the political right keeps criticizing and trying to reduce are already so small that they are absolutely insulting. I have an income of 1/3 of the poverty line on Social Security disability insurance and receive only $27 in food stamps. Nobody is getting rich off welfare. Welfare queens are a myth. Most people who receive government assistance still have to rely on food banks and other charities just to survive. To say otherwise is to perpetuate the propaganda of the political right and the wealthy, who would rather see the poor suffer. The United States treats the poor, elderly, and disabled poorly so wealthy individuals can afford luxury items like yachts. Story 32. Poor means inadequate housing, poor food, unsafe neighborhoods with underperforming schools, and insufficient clothing for your children, which leads to low self-esteem and perpetuates the cycle. Story 33. How much fear controls your life? That might be true for many people, but you are much more likely to stay in a difficult job with an abusive boss if you have been homeless or close to it. There is no safety net or parents to move back in with if you leave your job, especially without a decent reference and backup opportunity. Also, if you achieve an upper-class income status, you may feel like an outsider. Attending a charity gala as a young professional and seeing people bid more on a cake than my mother earned per month for our three-person household before I started working as a teenager made me feel overwhelmed. I know it was a good cause, but wealthy people just spend money in ways that, even years later, I cannot comprehend. Story 34. Your children know. Many parents do their best to shield their children from the stress of knowing, but it is probably healthier to talk to them in an age-appropriate manner about certain things related to finances because they understand more than you think. I knew why we occasionally skipped dinner and just got a Brahms cone, which cost $1.07 when I was growing up. I knew why I could not get a stuffed animal on the aquarium field trip, and I knew why my mother was crying at the gas station when she had to pay with pennies. Children have an immense capacity to understand and learn, but if you try to hide it, it can leave them confused and anxious. Obviously, you do not want to share it as a burden, but it is okay to teach them even basic financial concepts at an early age. Knowledge is power, and I would not have the financial literacy or stability I have in my life now if my mother had not been a great teacher. Story 35. Something as simple as a traffic ticket can completely destroy your entire life. You can't afford to pay it? It becomes a warrant for your arrest and a suspended license. The police run your plates while you are doing the speed limit, you get flagged and pulled over for driving while license suspended. You go to jail, your car and means of getting to work are impounded at a daily rate of about $100 per day. The judge does not care that you have rent to pay and children to feed. You probably already lost your job because you spent the weekend in jail with serious offenders. So now you are homeless because you cannot make rent. Story 36. It is expensive financially, as others have said, but it is also costly in terms of time and mental energy. A trip to get necessary groceries can take several hours, and that is after spending significant time arranging transportation. You might rely on public transportation and need to figure out how many groceries you can carry, if you are even able. You might depend on a friend giving you a ride. Are they reliable? Do they have a car? Do you need to pay them for gas? Or you might splurge on a rideshare service and look up estimated costs for different times. You also have to consider timing to account for things beyond your control. Will the ride be late? Is it too close to a work shift to risk? Everything requires so much planning to make the pieces fit. It is exhausting. Story 37. When I say I have no money, it means I literally do not have a single penny. It does not mean that I have some money that I do not want to spend. Story 38. The food you would not have eaten before you now eat. You may not enjoy it, but you appreciate having something. Story 39. I just came here to say that I knew I was going to be okay when I bought a full set of new tires for my car, and it did not set me back at all. Story 40. Food insecurity. I went 18 months eating bread sandwiches, rice, cheap bags of beans, and ramen so I could afford to feed my kids hot dogs and macaroni and cheese when they came to visit every other week. I gained 60 pounds. 8 years later, I am still trying to lose it. Story 41. How it costs more to be poor. You cannot front-load any expenses. That toothache becomes an infection, becomes septic, becomes death. That brake pad whine becomes a damaged brake caliper, brake rotor, becomes a major wreck. Your cheap boots cost half as much as the good ones but only last a third of the time. All the expenses that come up day to day carry that same impending doom. It grinds you down to nothing. When richer peers are surviving, they just do not understand why you cannot go to the dentist, fix your brake pad, or buy the good boots. Story 42. Being poor makes you very financially risk-averse. You cannot afford to invest in anything that has even a small chance of failing, which is one of many reasons it can feel impossible to start an education program or make even a small investment in something that could pay off in the future. Story 43. Having been poor in the past, I still do not understand people who will not eat leftovers. I have anxiety about waste. Story 44. Sales are only for people with money. We bought only what was needed when it was needed. We did not stock up on anything. There was never a sale for things when we needed them. I remember hearing, just stock up on things you need when they are on sale. Not happening. Story 45. Regular people talking about ethics concerning poor people, especially crime and racism, have no understanding of what happens during a typical day in underprivileged neighborhoods. If they had the courage to live in such areas for a few years, then I would respect their opinions on how to address crime and poverty. Story 46. When I was talking to a woman, she talked about struggling with raising children but still found time to travel with friends to Bali, Mexico, and other places. I do not think my mother even spent time with friends for fun. She works 6 days a week, stays at home on her days off to rest, watch soap operas, and gossip on the phone. Story 47. If you run out of money, you cannot borrow money from parents or family because they do not have money to lend. Neither do your friends. If you are struggling, everyone else is too. If you are better off than everyone you know, and you are broke and nobody can help you. If you are struggling and poor, you are in a difficult situation. Story 48. You get stuck. When I was homeless, I was complaining to a friend about how I needed a car to get a job and a place to stay. I needed a place to stay to get a car and a job. I needed a job to get a car and a place to stay. I felt trapped because I couldn't get one of them without the other two. He gave me a place to stay. I had a job within weeks and everything fell into place after that. Story 49. I had a friend who was really poor. I didn't fully understand how bad it was until I spent the night at their place. I had packed a backpack with snacks and a cooler with soda and a couple of beers. I was underage, but my dad let me grab a few since I was being dropped off. It was more food than their family of 4 had in the house. I just dumped it out on the kitchen table. I had a couple of summer jobs and $43 in my wallet. I slipped the money into their parents' sock drawer before I left the next morning. Bud cornered me the next Monday at school and hugged me. He told me the money kept their electricity on for the next month. I helped him get some grass-cutting jobs using my mower and gas. I still see him around town. Things got better for him and his family, and nobody clapped. Story 50. Not into designer clothes and accessories with status labels. Calvin Klein does not have your name on his ass, my mom said. Story 51. Your brain never recovers completely. I am still sensitive about food, privacy, borrowing and lending things, and money. I mask well 90% of the time, but when it slips, it is jarring. Story 52. Poverty generates community because only through community can a person truly survive poverty. Watching each other's children to avoid childcare costs, sharing skills to avoid repair costs, ride-sharing, and more. Community makes poverty manageable. Story 53. 1. It is expensive to be poor. You end up spending more on fixing or replacing things because the upfront cost of something like a reliable vehicle is too high when most of your paycheck goes toward other necessities like rent. If you are middle class, some poor people think of you as rich, even if you do not think of yourself that way. Many of the things you have, such as a safe home, video game consoles, and the ability to go on vacations, are luxuries that many people do not have. Do not blame impoverished children for the actions of their parents. Flowers can bloom in dark rooms, too. There is a correlation between race and poverty, but it is not because being white makes you inherently better. There are other factors. Do not be racist. There is so much more. Story 54. You become skilled at stretching meat and fish with pasta and rice. You become skilled at driving carefully. Story 55. How tiring it is. You are constantly working 2 to 3 jobs at a time just to survive. This means sacrificing family time, social time, errand time, and sleep, again, just to survive. All that work is not helping you escape poverty. It is just keeping you going. If you consider going to school for a degree, you will have to sacrifice one of your jobs on top of everything else listed above. This means having to choose which bills to pay or making partial payments. Story 56. The long-term impacts. My parents kicked me out with zero warning when I was 19, and I had no savings and nowhere to live. I figured it out, rented the cheapest room in a dangerous part of town, and started living off ramen. I found a job that I walked an hour to and from every day in a rural area with no public transit. I had no safety net and could barely pay my bills. Now that I am older and more financially stable, it is the small things that are a result of that time. I always have 2 spare work outfits because of the time I walked home in pouring rain and did not have any quarters for the laundromat to dry my only work clothes. I spent hours trying to dry my clothes with a hair dryer that broke before I could finish, and my skin broke out in hives because I had to wear my still damp clothes to work the next day. I always keep my pads and tampons well stocked because of the time my period caught me off guard after paying rent. I struggle to buy more than the bare minimum of groceries even though I can afford it because I am still in a scarcity survival mindset when it comes to money. I am able to provide more than the bare necessities at this point in my life, but I still think the way I did when I was forced to choose rent over food, and a small thing like my period coming early was a detrimental financial crisis. Story 57. How extremely difficult it is to get out of poverty. People speak about poverty flippantly or assume it is just one of those things or a stereotype about someone's lifestyle. It is almost like a disease, and I say that in an empathetic and loving way because it is imposed on people generation after generation, with nobody there to offer support. So when you manage to overcome it, it is akin to a miracle. Story 58. Being poor is really expensive. You miss a payment and interest builds. Can't afford to have a cavity filled? Then you need a root canal, often on a payment system with high interest. Can't afford $200 shoes that will last 15 years, so you buy $20 shoes that fall apart within a year. Credit is too bad to qualify for a mortgage, but your rent is more than a monthly mortgage payment would be. Processed food is cheaper than healthy food, or at least more accessible, but your healthcare costs are high, so you just don't eat healthily. Can't find a job that pays enough where you live, so you drive your old car into the ground commuting. And the cycle continues. Story 59. How something as small as a late paycheck or a bank holiday can cause a snowball effect that ends with homelessness through absolutely no fault of the person. Story 60. Just how expensive being poor is. You can only afford a car that is costly to maintain. You cannot stock up on bulk on-sale items. You cannot afford high-quality items that last. You are constantly having to pay fees such as overdraft charges, extra interest because you can only afford minimum repayments, and check dishonor fees. Once you are in a financial hole, everything is stacked against your efforts to climb out. Story 61. How difficult it is to get proper nutrition on a very tight budget. The cumulative negative effects on health caused by poor nutrition, inexpensive footwear, poorly regulated indoor temperatures, limited hot water, unsafe neighborhoods, and more. There are many ways that poverty wears people down. Story 62. Childhood poverty is the worst. In a word, shame. You need to experience it, going to school with holes in your clothing, getting free school meals, never being popular, being excluded from things, laughed at, ridiculed. Always having the feeling that people are looking down on you. Feelings of shame and embarrassment because you are poor. Others are similar, but you don't get much solace together. You don't draw their attention. You walk with your head down, feeling worthless. These things stay with you, shape you, and make you the adult you become. I have never been poor as an adult. If I were to lose it all tomorrow, it wouldn't bother me. How many people can say that and mean it? Some things need to be experienced. Story 63. How much more useful poor friends are than wealthy friends. Poor friends understand and need the same things you need. They offer only good, useful advice. Helping each other is not charity. It is something you do naturally. Feels different. Richer friends care just as much but offer useless advice and short-term help. Story 64. The choices. You have to make some seriously painful decisions. Often the options come down to a difficult situation versus not eating. Story 65. It is a cycle. You are late paying your bill because you had to feed your children first, so they add another fee. Your power gets cut off, and now they want a security deposit to turn it back on. You overdraft your bank account, so you are charged $30 every week until it is paid off. Sometimes it seems like there is no possible way out of the ever-deepening hole. Story 66. Hunger. Genuine hunger. You may feel a little hungry, but most people have not experienced lacking enough food to survive or having to choose between food, heating, or electricity. Story 67. Student loans are a big scam. Yes, they will pay for your education, but paying them back is impossible when you do not make enough money and the compounding interest keeps the amount due very high. No, it has nothing to do with your major. It is the lenders. Story 68. Hunger will make you consider things you would never consider doing before, and having hungry children will make you do things you thought you would never consider. Story 69. Not everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. Public transportation is time-consuming. Using a laundromat takes a long time and is also expensive. Story 70. I lived in poverty as a child. I was reflecting on this today. My grandmother would dig through public trash for receipts to get rebate money, and she would send me digging through the trash too, especially on Sunday for the coupons in the Sunday paper. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fun. I loved seeing how many coupon books I could collect for my grandmother. I enjoyed picking tangerines for her when I was done. I didn't mind being poor one bit. As a teenager, I became aware of the tremendous struggle poverty was. I started to notice my mom's suffering. I swore I would dig my way out of it, and I did. I became a nurse. I'm certainly not rich, but I never worry about the power bill, food, or repossession. I swear to you all, my whole family resents me for it. Story 71. It feels like it is never ending, regardless of the next paycheck on the horizon. That one is already allocated as well. Story 72. How rude people can be. How quickly people judge you. I remember a friend telling me her mother did not want her to come to our government apartment because of where we lived. My friend told her mother that she did not care. Story 73. How time-consuming it is to go to 6 different supermarkets to get the best deals and bring your own bags to avoid the 5-cent charge per bag, all while traveling by bus. Hoping the landlord does not deposit the rent check until tomorrow because that is when your paycheck hits the bank. Story 74. How minor mistakes can be major financial setbacks. A flat tire can cost you a job, and then you are homeless, all within the span of a month or less. Story 75. A comfortable place to sleep. When I was 10, we were homeless for nearly a year. I slept on the floor at my aunt's house on a leaky, broken air mattress and woke up feeling like a hot dog drowning in a bun, with my body fully on the floor. I got a foam convertible kid's chair that folded out and was about 20 inches wide. Then I had to share a used king-size mattress on the floor that I slept on with my mom and 6-year-old brother for a year until I got my own used twin mattress. As an adult, I have made sure my bed is as plush and comfortable as I can make it. My fiancé thought I was extra with all my cozy pillows and blankets, joking that he only needs one pillow and could sleep anywhere. I asked if he didn't want all the pillows on his side of the bed and told him about my past. He said he's spoiled now and loves my cozy bed. Story 76. Having to dress the part because of judgmental people. I had decent clothes that I bought at the thrift shop, but only on sale days when certain tag colors were just $1. I learned not to wear the nice dollar clothes when using women, infants, and children coupons because some person behind me would make comments about getting assistance while spending my money on designer clothes. So I wore old sweatpants while grocery shopping to look suitably poor. People bundle errands for each other. I do not smoke. Never did. I hate it. But my neighbor smoked and did not drive. When I went to the store, I could help her by picking up her cigarettes. However, using government assistance, everyone assumed you were broke because you spent your own money on cigarettes. People love to look at your cart and judge. Maybe you have soda, steak, or something else, and they assume it is for you and start making comments. Meanwhile, I was foraging for food in the woods, and my own lunch was often a plain microwaved potato. Story 77. The relentlessness of it. If you survive this month, your reward is another month with no apparent chance of your circumstances improving. Then another month, stretching on into a long cold winter and a grinding, uncertain future. And if by some fluke your situation does improve, it never stops feeling precarious and vulnerable, one or two big problems, and you could easily find yourself right back where you started. Story 78. Grew up poor. I am not poor anymore, but I keep very close tabs on my finances, not because I am cheap or fear I will lose it, but to make it easier for me to spend money. The ingrained instinct is to spend as little as possible, and having my finances on a spreadsheet or in accounting software reassures me that I can spend money on things other than necessities. Story 79. You cannot just take overtime or a raise because that will negatively affect your benefits, especially food assistance, for a very temporary or small increase in income. You may earn too much to qualify for benefits but still be unable to afford living without them. There is a gray area where improving your income can make your situation worse. You must ensure that any increase in earnings is significant enough to outweigh the potential loss of benefits. Story 80. How brittle it makes you. You are never truly happy or relaxed. You are always stressed about money. You are one unexpected expense away from homelessness or living in your car if you are not already doing that. Also, the complete lack of any health care is challenging. It may sound easy to go to the doctor on government health coverage in the United States, but that means possibly taking time off work to get where you need to be. What if you need a referral to a specialist? That means doing that at least twice. It simply is not possible most of the time. Story 81. The embarrassment for the children. I can't remember how old I was, but I remember getting to the front of the lunch line and the lady taking my card and saying my mother didn't pay, so I couldn't take the food. Some kids laughed as she took my maybe, $2 worth of product. If you think wholesale, I now say it was dramatic, but back then, my heart broke, my face turned red, and if that wasn't embarrassing enough, I stood there and cried while kids behind me shouted to get out of the line. Broke ass. Let me be clear. I am okay now, but it is easy for me to see people who are not worth fraternizing with from a mile away. Anyone who votes for something like this, you are lucky votes are anonymous because I would seriously question braking if I saw you crossing the street. Story 82. How completely isolating it is. No vacations, no entertainment like movies or plays, orchestra, and so on. Sorry, I can't go shopping with you. Can't go out to eat. May just eat to fill my stomach instead of what is nutritional. Don't judge me for eating popcorn for lunch. It was all I had. Or skipping meals so my children could eat. You get used to doing without, but then your metabolism shuts down. Frugality is a way of life. When you give food to a shelter, don't give them cans from 4 years ago in the back of your pantry or freezer burned meat. Just pick up a few extras at the store. People there are experiencing stress that you will never know, physically and mentally. Provide them with good meals and clothes they can wear to an interview. Shampoo, toothbrushes, and other necessities. Ask what they need. Their world has had the bottom fall out. They may have left with nothing at all, not even enough to call family. The shelter I stayed at charged us for each call. Story 83. How eating spoiled food as a child causes obsessive-compulsive disorder and food disorders. People should not donate expired food to food banks. Story 84. Not poor now, but my freezer is stocked. I always have an extra ketchup or mayonnaise in the cupboard. I am always worried in case I lose my job and have to live on 1/4 of my income. I keep extra packs of toilet paper, shampoo, conditioner, and other essentials. During my university years, food was scarce in my apartment. Sometimes I washed my hair with dish soap. I would go days eating only toast and eggs. Food anxiety is real. One habit I cannot break is checking labels on cans and donating items that are 9 to 12 months from expiration because I have so much new product. If I run out of anything, I make an immediate trip to the grocery store. I attended school on a tuition-free scholarship. Housing, books, and other expenses were not included. I worked very hard in high school to achieve that opportunity. Story 85. The constant anxiety is awful and can make you sick. You do everything you can think of to make sure the bills are paid on time, work extra, and cut back on your expenses, but then something always comes up. Even when nothing comes up, you are still anxious because you know it can. Story 86. A lot of us are fairly generous based on how often we went without basics. However, we have panic attacks about buying unnecessary things for ourselves. We know some of the more expensive versions of items like shoes can be sturdier and healthier for us, but we hesitate over whether we really need the dollar store tennis shoes or if another round of super glue and duct tape will make the pair we are wearing last just a little bit longer. Story 87. What it can be like being on state insurance, especially in a rural area. Some doctors or dentists do not accept it, so quality care is limited. Story 88. I've experienced poverty to some extent, and this is probably the first time I'm putting it into words. I was around 13 when I gave my piggy bank to my mom so she could buy half a liter of milk each day for a few days. Just enough for her to give me some for breakfast and make a highly diluted cup of tea for herself. I wasn't angry, just heartbroken for my helpless mother. I can only imagine how much it must have torn her up inside. That's just one example. There are hundreds more I could share, but it's emotionally exhausting to recall them. The fact that I'm still carrying this at 30 shows how deep the scars run. I still remember pretending not to notice when my mother sold her last piece of jewelry, her nose pin, just to buy me stationery before my exams. In poverty, every family member learns to live a private life, hiding their struggles. You fear judgment, shame from society, and pity from relatives. You don't want to add to your loved one's burden, knowing they're already doing all they can. Perhaps the hardest part is that parents always know what's happening with their children, but they're often too powerless to do anything about it. When you grow up in poverty, children mature far too quickly, and parents age even faster. These changes are irreversible. Even if things get better financially, the emotional toll stays with you. Simple things become luxuries, and I'm not even talking about eating out. For us, $2 menu burgers from a fast food restaurant, one large soft drink, and a cake were our birthday celebration. My brother and I looked forward to it all year. Family gatherings, which should be a source of joy, become stressful because you can't afford transport, gifts, or even decent clothes. Here's the thing, we weren't in that situation because of poor choices or medical emergencies. Life just dealt us a bad hand. Sometimes that's all it takes. The hardest part is that escaping poverty means fighting both your circumstances and the system. Even when I performed exceptionally well in school, I couldn't apply to top colleges because we couldn't afford transport, let alone tuition. I was a rank holder in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics stream I was passionate about, but ended up choosing a course in accountancy simply because it was affordable. Poverty teaches you about the hidden privileges in life, things invisible to those who have never had to go without. It strips you of basic happiness, dignity, and choice. Today, I'm doing well. My family is too. I'm an accountant and manager at a prestigious firm with a 3- or 4-letter name, and I moved to London for a great career opportunity, one that finally allowed me to break free from the cycle of poverty. I started building healthy relationships, and I found a wonderful partner to share my life with. Still, it might take me a few more years to fully open up about some of the experiences I buried deep inside. Poverty isn't just a financial condition, it's more like a disease. It isolates you and permanently changes your mindset and behavior. It affects how you interact with others and how, even after you get what you worked years for, you sometimes have to let it go because you can't pursue it. While my friends are aiming to buy a house and take multiple international trips a year, I know it is still years away for me to achieve those life goals. Yet, I am quietly the most content person because we all did not start at 0. They started at step 1 and I started at -10. But that's just my little secret. No, poverty is not a choice, a condition, or a consequence. It's a disease, one that steals your joy, silences your dreams, and leaves behind lasting wounds. And yet, it also teaches you to recognize the invisible privileges others never even know they have. Story 89. It is tiring all the time. Stress changes you long-term, and the physical toll of walking everywhere, working physical jobs, and being forced to work while ill will have massive health repercussions later. I will need a knee replacement from overuse because I had no car and the public transportation was very poor back then, so I had to walk to work and school. Yet another thing I cannot afford. Thank the Lord, exercise still helps. Story 90. Having to steal a roll of toilet paper from the doctor's office every day for 5 days every single month. Story 91. How much work it is. Figuring out how much your grocery shopping will cost before checkout, how much money you have to spend after paying bills from a small paycheck, finding ways to get free items, and determining what you need for any government assistance. Story 92. I am still upset when utilities are turned off for any reason. One of my first memories is my mom taking me to my grandparents' house when our electricity was shut off, but my dad was not allowed to come. I was devastated and very worried about him. That was the first of many times. I once forgot to pay a bill in college and felt physically ill until the service was restored. Story 93. The system is not designed for you to escape poverty. Receiving Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits? Want to improve and pick up a couple of extra shifts? Now you make too much money, and they reduce or take away benefits, leaving you worse off than if you had not worked the extra shifts. My mom tried to do better, and then we were kicked off the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for making about $10 over the limit. Suddenly, she had to figure out how to feed 2 kids plus come up with $50 per month for our lunch accounts. $1.25 for just lunch? Double that with breakfast. Whenever that happened, I would end up not having breakfast and eating the leftovers of my friend's lunch. Some friends gave me their lunch entirely, which I was always very grateful for. Even when I was paying reduced lunch at 25 cents, I would search through the apartment or car for spare coins and ask my friends for a quarter. Sometimes I gave up my quarter to my sister so she could eat. Imagine doing that every day for years, trying to focus in school and do well but constantly being hungry and uncertain if you would get enough to eat. Story 94. When I was a child, I had to stretch 2 packs of ramen between 5 kids, including myself. I always served youngest to oldest. There were hardly any noodles left in the pot by the time it was my turn, so I mostly just had broth those nights. My brothers, who did not know any better, were always mad that I got the most broth. I would lie and say it was because I cooked it, so I got first choice. I did not want them to know I was not getting much food so they could have something to eat. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.